Tell me about the Tool Shed Reading Club. He said, changing the subject.
Well, in the backyard in Henderson, Louisiana, our little house, we had a tool shed that had a few tools and Don's duck decoys, and I had a neighbor, across the street neighbor, a little girl who would come home. She was a latchkey kid, and her parents were at work, and she would often come to the house and ask me to read to her, and we started just enjoying one another, and she would color and I would read aloud to her, and sometimes she would read aloud to me, and she started bringing all of her friends with her. Some days there'd be as many as 10 kids in the living room, and they'd all want to color and do crafts while I read, and so there was this patina of glitter over everything in the living room every day. So I suggested one day that we use the tool shed for our reading club, which it had become sort of a club by this point, and we moved all of Don's decoys and ugly tools, as the kids call them, to the back, and we put a magic screen in front of the ugly stuff, and we just used the tool shed as a clubhouse, and it grew and grew. And I wrote about it in the newspaper column, and people started sending books from all over the country, and the kids they knew more about the checking out process than they did the return process, so that was all right. The books ended up with the kids where they belonged, and some days there would be 2 of us, some days there would be 20, and we kept this going for a couple of years during the school year, not in the summertime, because I was rarely there in the summertime. And you know, I'm sure it meant a lot more to me than it did to them, but Henderson had no library. There was no library in the town of Henderson. These kids would have had to go at least 6 miles to the neighboring town of Cecilia to have a library, and most of them hadn't, you know, they could not do that on their own. So in writing about the tool shed, a woman in Florida read the column, and she donated books to the town of Henderson, and it's sort of the seed for a library, and they're working on that library right now. It's in the old funeral home in Henderson, and they're doing repairs, and I'm hoping that soon there will be a library there. And the kids, they were eager to read and learn, and together and continue their school day in an organized fashion, and I was just lucky enough to be able to facilitate it a bit, you know. Just I had the space and the time in the afternoons, so it was a great experience. And after 2 years, I don't know, there were divorces and people moved away, and it just sort of died a natural death. But by that time, the town was working on this library.
Library,
so.